This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everybody. We have a jam-packed agenda this morning, and I'm going to call this meeting to order. March 25th, 2022 at 9:03 a.m. And first item on the agenda, public comments. Do any members of the public want to weigh in? Okay, hearing none. Before we move on to our next item, we want to welcome a new member to our board, Matthew Dayton, who is the Undersecretary for Legal Affairs at the Office of Policy and Management. And we're really happy to have you aboard. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. I have big shoes to fill in Jeff Beckham's place, but I'm excited to be here. And yeah, I just have some background. I come from DRS, so I'm a tax guy. I've been doing in tax for 16 years. Now I'm over at OPM as the Undersecretary for Legal Affairs. So excited to be here and excited to work with you guys.
Oh, that's great. And, you know, I think you're going to find very quickly that this team is very receptive to input. So anytime you want to weigh in, feel free. We're happy to hear.
Excellent. Look forward to it.
So, okay, excellent. We're moving on to the consent agenda. The minutes. Has anybody got any questions about the minutes? Okay. And then 3 more items on the consent agenda. We're circling back to the Groton subbase, and you know, this is an exciting project that we're really thrilled to have. But of course, given COVID and you know all the issues with bringing in supplies and you know all that kind of thing, you know, we've had to postpone the completion date. So and so Brian, do you want to talk about these 3 items?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Reed. So the Groton subbase, as you all know, is working away. We're working to finalize our agreements with the various lenders in the project. So just need more time. It'll come together. And then for those new members, we have a process for staff approval of transactions. So transactions that are less than $500,000 and no more in aggregate than $1 million, as long as the transactions are consistent with the comprehensive plan and budget, staff can review and approve them. So there was one project in this mailing, $115,000 roughly CPACE project. So once we approve that and it clears the queue, and the staff will continue to review opportunities for additional transactions. So those are the 3 items on the consent agenda, resolutions 1 through 3. But we also included, actually, why don't we see if we can move the consent agenda, then we can do a quick report out on some of the other items, if that works.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions related to the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved, John Harity.
Thank you, John. Second?
Seconded. Vicky Hackett. Brenda Watson, I second.
Oh, thank you, Brenda. Any abstentions? Just to make sure if anybody wanted to weigh in on why they might abstain. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, it's passed. So moving on to our investment updates and recommendations. So this is item 4, item A, sub-item A on item 4, and the Green Liberty Notes. And we're so excited about how these have been well received. So I think it's Bert and David are going to talk about that.
Yep, actually, Madam Chair, David Beach is going to take the lead here in providing the update. Thanks, David.
Great, go, David.
Thank you. So since the last board meeting, we've been able to kind of finalize our numbers for the first round of the Green Liberty Notes. For those newer to the board, this is the issuance we did back in December with the goal of lowering our bond prices so that more low and moderate income residents could invest in the green economy. So we have final numbers. $190,400 was raised from 114 investors. Really proud that over half of those investors were Connecticut residents, and 52% of them invested less than $1,000, which means there's about 59 people who we likely would have missed with our Green Liberty bonds, but now we're able to invest in the Connecticut Green Bank because we were able to lower that price from $1,000 to $100. So that's a really great thing. We're also working on a certificate to provide to our Green Liberty Notes holders, and there is a first mock-up there on the right. We can go ahead and move on slides. Thank you. So our next round, we're planning to launch on April 13th, a week before Earth Day. So we're looking forward to getting some extra traffic for those who are interested in celebrating the Earth Day holiday. We once again have a $250,000 goal. And this time we are pursuing a rating with S&P. Nothing final there yet, but we do hope to have that in place before we go live. We think that could provide an extra level of investor confidence, especially for potential foundations who would like to invest in the Green Liberty Notes. So that's an exciting development. And we've also done a lot of learning from round one, changing up our marketing tactics. And we're also working or going to be featured in Green America's upcoming magazine. They have about 30,000 subscribers. So we're hoping to make a good impression there and hopefully drive some more investors. And that is the general update for the Green Liberty Notes. Thank you.
I had a question, if I could. This
Sure.
is John Harity.
Go,
For
John.
the $100 notes, do you still need to find a broker and go through a broker to get them?
No, that's one of the cool things. You can just go online and pay via your bank account, send a check if you'd like. And no, you don't need to have a broker. So that was important for us as well, because it's another barrier to entry. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Is that Social Security thing still? I think some people were asking about that at some point, that you have to give your Social Security number.
Yeah, we haven't really found a way around that. I believe that's with crowdfunding regulations. We would if we could.
It's also because at the every year, if you purchase a security that requires reporting to the IRS, generally that's done on a form 1099 that many of you receive annually for various investments or deposit accounts that you have. And the only way to track that is by your tax ID number, or in most cases, your Social Security number. So there's no way around that. That information has to be submitted because it has to be collected for those purposes.
Okay, that's good. But you ran down the research, because I know we got pushback on that from some board members. Good.
Yeah, there's no way around that. I mean, I wish we could avoid some of the reporting requirements of the Internal Revenue Service, but I think they trump us every day of the week.
Well, now we have Matt on board, so we're going to be good with the state, right? Comes out of that DRS background. Okay, so the next item, late fees and penalties forgiveness, the forgiveness process, which we revisit constantly, and I think Bert, you and Brian Farnham are going to talk about that.
That's right, Brian. I guess I'll take the lead here, and apologies that not sure if I'm sharing my webcam or if I'm on or not. I'm a little challenged. I'm up in Hartford and haven't quite gotten the protocol set for the wireless here in the office. So anyway, I'll just do this live, as they say. So the a number of the newer board members might not be aware of this, but back in 2018, the board approved a framework and process for not only funding the loan loss reserve, reserve for loan losses that is on our balance sheet, but also a process for restructuring and, if necessary, if it should come to that, writing off transactions on our balance sheet. Fortunately, we rarely do that. Been very minor instances of that. So that is called our loan loss decision process. We revisited that, and that process was contained in your board package as an attachment to the memorandum that was circulated for the purposes of discussing the fees and penalties, the late fees and penalties we're discussing today. We revisited that process in 2020, in the spring of 2020, around the time of COVID. At that time, we wanted to set aside some additional reserves in case we needed to provide for loan losses as a result of restructurings or non-payments. And in addition to which, we set forth a process where staff could assess and negotiate COVID restructurings, and that was contained in those memorandum and board approvals in the spring of 2020. Furthermore, we extended that process at the bank level. We realized that since we have transactions not only at the bank level, but also at the subsidiary level, we extended that loan loss decision process to the subsidiaries. And that was done in June of 2020. The process, though, although it deals with restructuring of past due principal and past due interest, it does not deal specifically with accrued default interest penalties or fees, which need to be either enforced or modified or waived as we step forward through discussions and negotiations with our borrowers or counterparties. So since that process didn't specifically point this out, we are bringing this forward for clarification to include language as slight amendments to our loan loss decision process to make it possible for staff to undertake a restructuring, not only for principal and interest, which is already covered, but also to cover default interest penalties or fees, which it's probably implied, but it's not specifically called out. And since we have a pending transaction that is in discussion with the borrower counterparty, it's timely that we're able to move forward with this clarification, or else we'll be kind of held up in those discussions with the uncertainty of our authority to be able to make those changes. So that's why we're not seeking ACG committee or deployment committee review of the edits, because of the urgency of the need to kind of move forward with those negotiations with the borrower counterparty. So happy to take any questions on this particular request from any of the members of the board. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, it's Tom Flynn. Can I ask a couple questions?
Please, Tom. Go ahead.
You. Hello, everybody. Bert, thanks for the update on this. in certain instances, do we not have, based on our agreements with the towns, do we not assure our payment by getting in line directly with real estate taxes that are due?
Yes, you're referring to our commercial PACE transactions.
Yes. So how does this apply to those transactions, or does it at all? It doesn't, right?
It does. It actually does, because under our
Okay.
commercial PACE loan agreements, those have default interest, which is typically at the rate of 18%, 1.5% a month, just like if you
Right.
miss paying your property taxes. There could also be fees on top of that we would levy. And this is one of the reasons we need to come back to the board for clarification here, because without the ability to have this clarified in the process, we're unable to restructure those amounts that might be past due and unpaid in terms of trying to work out an arrangement with the customer.
How many customers are falling into this bucket now? I mean, thankfully, we haven't had a lot of write-offs or things like that, as you alluded to earlier. But what size of this issue are we anticipating if I were to ask it for right now?
Very small, very small. The transaction that I mentioned in my comments, the outstanding balance is $67,000 in terms of principal due. However, in terms of past due accrued interest and penalty interest, I think we're looking at another $10,000 to $15,000. So it's a small transaction, but it happens to be a nonprofit. I don't want to go beyond the description of the customer beyond that, because it could reveal the identity of the customer or make it more easy to determine that customer's identity. We don't want to do that in open session, but we feel that we'll be able to work this out. Also, in this particular transaction, there's security that we can avail ourselves of with the ZREC contract. There is solar involved in this particular transaction, and we have the right to secure ourselves with those cash flow streams. We're going to work to get those directly as opposed to through the customer. So that will offset some of the amounts that are due from the customer. But in addition to that one transaction, Tom, there are two, we just met this week, there are two CPACE transactions or PPAs that are slow payers, but they always seem to catch up. And those are really small outstanding amounts, quite de minimis, meaning the payments are on the order of about $2,000 per 6 monthly cycle. So these are not keeping me up at night, in other words, or any of the staff. But we really take pride in being able to collect on the entire portfolio. We believe in fact, we do have an excellent payment history with all of the customers of the Green Bank. I think we've been, call it good underwriting, call it, good character of borrower, call it good collateral. There are a whole number of factors that lead to that, but fortunately, this is not a big issue for the Green Bank.
Yeah, hey, question for you. And first of all, thank you. Second of all, I agree with your commentary, including what you just said as to, the many reasons why. And some of it, although those are all great reasons, some of it comes down to luck as well, as it always does, right? But you raised something in your discussion that I have a question on. And I don't know that you can answer it now, but if we do a restructuring of some of these things, thankfully the amounts have been de minimis, or we do have a write-off, given the fact that we do have public monies in this, is it our obligation to actually disclose who didn't pay their bills off and who we're working with on that? I mean, isn't that, I'm trying, I know what private companies do, but in essence, we're not a private company. So you said, hey, I don't want to give away the not-for-profit that you're dealing with right now, and I get it. But at one time, do we have to disclose that, given the fact that this is funded through the public in some manner?
Well, I think once that's a good question, and I'll offer my thoughts, and then Brian Farnan's probably on the line. He can opine from a legal perspective, and my personal view is that once it's said and done, meaning once things, if we write it off and it's done, it's closed, then disclosure, there's no reason not to disclose at that point. It would be a matter of public record almost, or the ability to go to public records and see, for example, a foreclosure that had been filed in the courts. Those records are public. You just have to know where to look, so to speak. So there's I wouldn't necessarily post it on our website, but it's to your point. We could put it in a ledger someplace, or at least present it to the board on some quarterly basis. In fact, I think we're working on this quarterly report out. You've been a part of that process, Tom, yourself, in terms of getting, what are the regular suite of reports we want to bring forward to the board to keep them informed, but not inundated with information, so that would certainly fall in those reports, and that would be available through our website. If people want to go, digging through, the reports, they would be able to find it. But Brian, I don't know if you have any other thoughts to Brian Farnan, if you're on.
I don't believe he's on, Bert.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, I think it's first of all, Bert, thank you. I think I concur with what you're saying legally. I think that makes good sense. There's the part where you're negotiating, and obviously you don't want to negotiate in public, so you do that behind closed doors and get it wrapped up for both parties. There's also the part of it that, the public has the right to know, given it is, public funds that are being used. There's also, quite frankly, if we get into it, there's also something in the court of public opinion as to a little bit of public shaming, if that's the case, in order to get the funds back, that they don't want their names out in the public, that they haven't paid us, if in fact that's an issue. So I think it's something we just need to be cognizant of. We certainly have to follow the letter of the law. We certainly have to do what's in the best interest of getting the money in the door if we have and then the third item is just keeping the public informed, and really to the extent that you can actually use that as leverage to get more payment out of it. I think that should be considered where it's appropriate. That's my take on it.
Very, very good observations and thoughts. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Any more questions or comments or observations?
So this is Vicki Hackett. I just would weigh in on the side of transparency here. This is, as has been noted by others, this is public funding, and I think understood that you may be negotiating right now behind closed doors, but ultimately I think we're accountable to the public for what's happening with these funds. So I would weigh in on the side of full transparency here. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. Yeah, I agree. I mean, and particularly given all the close watching of public-private entities such as ourselves, I think it's really important that we be forthcoming in that regard. So thanks, Tom. That was very good to help us weigh in on that.
Thank you.
So if there are no discussions on this, I think, is it time to move resolution number 4?
I'll move that. This is Tom.
Okay. Any second? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Was that Brenda?
I think it was Adrian.
Adrian? Oh, great. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, moving on. Now I think we're going to hear financing programs and updates. It's going to be Mackie and Bert Hunter again.
Yes, thank you, Chair Reed. This is Mackie Dykes. I'll get started here. Bert, feel free to jump in if you want. So I'm going to talk about our Small Business Energy Advantage partnership with Eversource. If we could go back one slide. I think we skipped the intro slide. There we go. Just as background, longtime board members will recall 3 years ago, we entered into this partnership with Eversource to provide capital alongside Amalgamated Bank for their Small Business Energy Advantage program. This is a program that provides a whole suite of energy efficiency services, from a free upfront audit to, I guess I said prior to that, it matches you with a contractor. If you don't have one, you get a free upfront audit that identifies your opportunities, provides incentives, and then where we come in is they offer 0% on-bill financing. Prior to our partnership, Eversource was using a mix of ratepayer capital that they get through their conservation and load management, so the energy efficiency funds, as well as actual Eversource shareholder capital, which was quite expensive, around 10%. So the ratepayer funds were being used to buy those funds down to 0%, so that the customers of the SBEA program could get those 0% loans. So through this partnership, we were able to source much cheaper capital. It was a floating rate, but it varied between, I think the lowest we got down was to the low 2s, and then up into somewhere between 2 and 4% throughout the 3 years. So quite a discount, provided a lot of ratepayer savings. And throughout the partnership, we've been able to slowly expand the access of capital through the program. So we started with $100,000 loans to businesses for up to 4 years. And the name's a little confusing, but also the state of Connecticut and municipalities can access this program, even though it says small business in the title. We've been able to expand the amount, the loan financing that they can get. We also, as you see here at the top with that /BEA, that's the Business Energy Advantage, which is a newer program that Eversource launched that's targeted at slightly bigger businesses than the small business. We expanded the financing offering to that. So it's been a great success, and the agreement has run its course. We got a short-term extension from you all in December, so we could continue the negotiations, but we're back now to request another 3-year, essentially a 3-year renewal of the program with some important changes. So the opportunity here is, as said on the slide, to renew that agreement. This would be another 3-year commitment. We are previously the interest rate was tied to LIBOR, which is going away. So we're adjusting our benchmarking rate here to, as you can see, the 2-year Treasury plus 2.10% for 4-year loans, and the 5-year Treasury plus 2.10 for loans greater than 4 years. We're also setting a floor of 3%. These loans are fully backed by and guaranteed by the Energy Efficiency Fund. So the agreement really, from a loss perspective, doesn't have any exposure aside from CEF going away. That we're made whole for any we make Amalgamated Bank whole for any losses, and then we're made whole for both our and the amalgamated portion by the efficiency fund. Next slide. So I'll sort of get in a little more into the structure. So as I mentioned, this is the Green Bank alongside Amalgamated. They are the senior lender, where, as I mentioned, the subordinated. We purchase the loans from Eversource. They originate them, do the underwriting, and on a roughly quarterly basis, we'll purchase them. Initially, the split between us and Amalgamated was 90-10. We're increasing we're doubling our share. We're proposing to 20%. These are great assets. Frankly, we're doing a lot of the work in terms of actually making this facility work, a lot of the admin. So we want to get a little more revenue from this program. So Amalgamated understood that and is willing to give us 20%. So we're proposing that in this 3-year extension. And then Eversource, since these bills are on the customer's electric bills, Eversource is the servicer for the loans. And on a monthly basis, they send the funds to us. And again, as you can see down at the bottom, the CEF is providing the guarantee and reimbursement for any losses to us. As I mentioned, this has been successful. We've done almost 6,000 loans through it for $75.5 million. We just closed our last purchase last week. So this, it's continuing to churn. Let's see. I should mention there's also the normal split is 80-20 for every loan, but we do have flexibility to purchase up to 100% if there's anything that for instance, is too big for the agreement. Sometimes Eversource projects that they want to do that are worthwhile, that are larger than the facility designs. We have the flexibility to work with them to purchase the 100% of those. Next slide. So there's some, I think, exciting changes that we're making, requesting in this renewal request that make the program even better and increase access to capital. Aside from the first 3 bullets, which I already talked about, some of those sort of customer-facing changes we're increasing the maximum term length for all borrowers from 4 years to 7 years. This should allow longer payback measures and more comprehensive projects. Utilities right now are focused on moving away from lighting as their primary source of savings. So this financing tweak will help make a lot of those non-lighting measures, which tend to have longer payback, help the cash flows with those. We'll also increase access to capital for all the eligible borrowers. Right now, businesses are capped at 100,000, which will keep that individual site cap at 100,000. But there's a lot of businesses that have multiple properties. So think like banks with multiple branches, or restaurant franchises. We will allow one of those businesses that has multiple properties to take loans out on each of those up to a cap of $1 million. The contractors particularly love this and want this because, as you can imagine, they spend all this time acquiring a customer with a big portfolio, but then they can only do one building at a time. So this will, they're particularly excited about getting this change. For most municipal, for credit municipalities that are A or above from a credit rating perspective, we're increasing their both individual and aggregate loan balance, outstanding loan balance to $5 million from $1 million. And then for the state, we're increasing the individual loan balance to $5 million and removing any sort of aggregate loan cap. And then there's some sort of simplifying underwriting requirements. And then importantly, we're just incorporating some language that's gonna help with the bond ratings that a lot of the bonds we talked about, the Green Liberty notes, are backed by the revenues from these loans. So we're incorporating some language that will help with that bond rating that Bert referenced, or David referenced in his presentation. So I believe that's the end. Next slide. I think that's it. Goes to the resolution. So I'll pause there for any questions.
Anybody have any questions? Tom?
No, I'm all good. Thank you.
You're good? Okay, just want to make sure. Okay, well, hearing no questions, Do I hear a motion to adopt resolution number 5?
So moved, John Harity.
And who was second?
I'll second. It's Vicky.
Thank you, Vicki. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, it passes. Excellent. Moving on.
Great. I'll start the conversation here, but then I'm going to turn it over to Elise Buzzelli. So now we're going to talk about our commercial property assessed clean energy new construction program. Stepping back a little, commercial property assessed clean energy, CPACE, is really our, I'd say, along with the PPA, our premier commercial lending product. We're the administrator of the program statewide, and we also lend through there's a number of private lenders, and then we also offer financing through the program. Back since 2012, when the policy passed, for most of the program's life, we were focused on retrofits. But I guess somewhere between 2 and 3 years ago, we started a new construction pilot, as this was in conjunction with CPACE nationally, really starting to CPACE programs around the country starting to focus on using CPACE as a tool for new construction. So we learned a lot in those few years of the pilot, but wanted to sort of incorporate those learnings into a full-fledged program. So sort of move out of pilot mode and into a full program. We brought an initial recommendation or sort of draft full program guidelines to the board last meeting, got some great feedback, and then took those out for public comments, and are coming and have a final recommendation that we want to bring to you that incorporates both the board and public comment feedback. But let me turn it over to Elise to sort of give that full history as well as run us through the recommendation.
Great, thanks, Mackie. Also, we're joined by Vijay Gopalakrishnan and Satyan Moray, who are both on our team, our technical administration team with DNV, and they worked with us very closely on getting these new guidelines up and running and workable. So they're also joining us on the line as well. So as Mackie mentioned, we launched this at the end of 2018, the new construction pilot for CPACE. And we proposed using a whole building energy model to demonstrate energy performance above code. The minimum requirement at that time was 10% above code. The IECC, which is the International Energy Conservation Code, I think I got that right. IECC code 2015 was what we were looking at when we launched this in 2018. So we were using the total eligible construction cost, or the TECC, of the construction budget to determine the eligible amount of CPACE financing that could be accessed. So we would look at the budget and then determine what parts of that construction budget were actually eligible to be financed. And then we were tying the percentage of CPACE financing directly to the energy performance above code. So if your building design was 12% above code, we were able to offer 12% of the TECC in CPACE financing, with 20% as the max. Next slide, please. And so, as Mackie mentioned, we launched it, we ran it. The pilot was actually pretty successful. We did 6 projects, all with our capital provider partners that Mackie mentioned. 3 different capital providers closed 6 projects for a total of $27 million, including the largest CPACE project we have in Connecticut now, that $13 million project with Castle Green. Next slide. And so, as Mackie mentioned, we got a lot of good feedback. We brought this to the board in January, and you all had some great conversations there. And we also, spoke with our capital provider partners. Of course, we want to build a program that is accessible and usable, and we want our partners to be able to utilize it well in the market. So we went, as Mackie mentioned, we put together kind of a draft program recommendation. We actually put that out to public comment in February. After, of course, we brought it to the board, and we got some good recommendations. One of them was, the energy codes are going to be changing at the end of this year. In October, we're going to be moving to IECC 2021, which are more stringent codes. So we wanted to reduce the minimum energy performance above code that was needed to access CPACE financing. Of course, more stringent codes means less room to incorporate energy saving technologies. And then we wanted to increase the overall percentage of the total eligible construction cost that could be eligible for financing. Really just, giving our building owners and our developers, capital providers, more access to our financing. And then we also looked to add the HERS index rating as an alternative path for multifamily properties. The HERS rating index is what the utility companies use for their residential new construction program in order to access incentives. And it's also we can directly correlate the HERS rating index to a percentage above code. There's a direct correlation there, so we figured it was, really comparing apples to apples with the existing whole building energy model approach we were taking. And then we also were looking to add some bonus technologies, which we can talk about a little bit later, I think, in our recommendation slide. But basically, technologies that are pretty common, folks, things that folks know and are used to installing, but additional ways for folks to unlock additional financing. And then we also wanted to put in kind of the stretch option, or really push folks to look at efficient designs by by looking into designing for an all-electric net zero building. There are incentives and pathways, again, that the utility programs use on the new construction side that kind of push this as well. So trying to align a little bit there. Next slide, please. And so these are some of the comments that we had heard from the board in January, as well as from the public comments. We had one public comment come through, and it was actually the public comments that came through were in an exhibit in the memo that we had presented to the board for this resolution. The comments came from our capital provider partners at the CPACE Alliance. And they are there's a collective of, I think there's over 20 different members to that CPACE Alliance, but all of the capital provider members are eligible lenders in the Connecticut program. So we certainly wanted to make sure we were listening to what they were interested in seeing, excuse me, in terms of changes. So the first thing that they were looking at is changing the approach. So looking at a loan to value approach instead of a total eligible construction approach as the basis to determine eligible percentage in CPACE financing. They also, of course, were looking at, they also wanted to have kind of another option in terms of accessing another level of energy performance to get more CPACE financing. And then just generally increasing the amount of CPACE financing available. And then this is something we also heard from the board. This last point here is exploring some alternative standards. So, things that are pretty common that we're all kind of familiar with, LEED certification, as well as Energy Star score. Next slide, please. So our final recommendation, again, just to kind of reiterate the goal here, is to give folks a more accessible way to access CPACE for new construction projects, a simplified way, but also trying to preserve the program's public policy aspects. So our final recommendation is to simplify determining the eligible amount of the total eligible construction costs that can be financed by decoupling the performance percentage above code from the actual amount financed. And we have a chart that I'll show you in the next slide that we can look at. We added the ability for multifamily properties to use the HERS index. They're already using it on the residential new construction side, looking for incentives. So, didn't want to add another layer there for them to have to go back and still use a whole building energy model. And then we also added options for to access additional financing through those bonus technologies that I had mentioned earlier. These bonus technologies are they're ones that we picked specifically. We worked with Sadi and Vijay on this to really promote clean energy technologies, state policy goals, energy transition goals. So things like solar PV, fuel cells, battery storage, what else? EV chargers, heat pumps, things like that. So if you do 2 bonus technologies, you're eligible for an additional 5% financing. And if you do 4, you'd be eligible for an additional 10. And then we kept that option for property owners to design for all electric net zero to access the highest level, which we set at 35% of the TECC. You could switch to the last slide there, Brian. So these are just quick snippets of the charts and the tables that you'll see in the Appendix N of the program guidelines. And we're just showing you the 2021 percentages here. There's also options for HERS for all the way back to 2006. And then we also give you a path for prior to 2021 for the whole building energy model. But this kind of lays out exactly, what percentages you can access depending on what percentage above IECC code you are. So I think actually, if we could switch back to the slide right before, Brian, just to if there's any questions here on what the final recommendation was, but also wanted to address the kind of the biggest one, especially for the board, around the LEED certification and Energy Star options, and the reason why we didn't include them. I'm going to kind of tee those up here, and then I'm going to let Vijay and Sadi kind of fill in some of the technical details because they're the engineers. But on both of those, since we have determined that the basis for these being eligible for these projects from a technical standpoint was meeting a certain percentage of energy performance above code. In both of these scenarios, for kind of different reasons, they really, the LEED certification along with the Energy Star score didn't quite meet those. So I'll let Vijay, if you want to quickly chat about LEED, and then I think Sadi will be able to talk about Energy Star.
Sure, thanks, Elise. So yeah, from the LEED perspective, there's various elements that go into the scoring system for LEED, and there isn't a correlation really between a specific LEED certification category and percent above code. So we looked into that, and there isn't really a correlation with the scoring system, and therefore, since the basis of the new construction program is code and percent better than code, we determined that LEED just was not, there was no apples to apples way to compare with LEED certifications. Sadi?
Thanks, Vijay. Thank you. Sadi,
Sadi,
Well, Vijay, if you want to give a real quick background there too, that'd be great.
Sure, sounds good. So yeah, from an Energy Star perspective, we looked into the scoring methodology, which essentially involves looking at the existing building stock starting from the 1900s, and then the scoring mechanism involves determining how, essentially comparing the new design to existing building stocks. And if you're at 70, if you have a score of 75, that essentially it means you're above the 75th percentile compared to the existing building stock. But the existing building stock doesn't really have a correlation with code. And again, so it was, anywhere starting the 1900s through, I think, 2012 is where the existing building stock inventory is. And so there was, again, no clean way. We tried to reach out to, the EP and others to discuss this as well. There is no clean way to correlate the Energy Star score to a percent better than, the IECC 2021 or IECC 2015 code. And therefore, again, there wasn't a way to correlate the code, which is the basis of the new construction program.
Yeah, and this is Mackie. I'll just add, like why we're talking, why we're spending time on LEED and Energy Star. We heard loud and clear from both the board as well as capital providers, like, look, let's simplify this as much as possible, right? Like we just went through all these, how this worked, TCC, performance above code, right? It's complicated, right? And we're trying to convince developers to use this. So, if we could, instead of using these complicated TCC and performance above code, if we could just use something like Energy Star or LEED, like I think everyone's probably familiar with those. Developers certainly are. We could just say, if you LEED Platinum, then you can use CPACE. That would be ideal. But we're, as you just kind of heard, we're really limited because at the end of the day, the statute demands energy savings, and the only way that we've been able to find we can prove that is by comparing building performance to code. So that we to still work within the statute, we tried, but we couldn't stretch any of these standards that we looked at to fit within that that legal requirement. So fortunately or unfortunately, we're still stuck with this. What I think is a simpler solution than where we were, but still one that requires a little extra work for building owners, or developers to really understand and do a lot, and do energy modeling for their building.
It's Tom. Can I ask a question on this? And forgive me, I'm not as conversant in maybe the requirement of the statute on this as maybe I should be on this particular point. But there's two things here, right? There's the economic risk of how much we're going to lend these developers, which it's hard to base that economic risk on how much they're going to save, because as you've pointed out, you really don't know how much they're going to save, right? It's based on code, it's based on projections, it's based on all this, but at the end of the day, there's so many different factors I would guess as to how they're going to save, that really the economics of whether you should lend them the funds or not to be more energy efficient has to be based on just their overall financial projections. Is that a fair statement to start?
Yes, I would say that. That's true.
Yeah. Then the next thing, I understand what you guys are wrestling with here. You're almost trying to develop a standard saying, well, we got to be a baseline as kind of if they built it, right? And you're using code, and then you're saying, well, the code maybe not so much, maybe we need to use Energy Star. And you're trying to come up with some, for lack of a better word, it's a, and I hate saying it like this, but it's kind of a fictitious projection. It's like, as if it existed, it would do this, but because we're doing these items, it does this. Ergo, the difference is the energy savings, and we can lend them the money. And you're trying to come up with that standard. I have a question for you. Is it possible at all within the standard to just say, staying within the statute, to just say, hey, based on your economics of this project as it stands, if you deploy these types of technologies that we know based on factors and what have you, and what we've done with other buildings saves energy, we can lend you the money. So as opposed to saying, and I'm going to make this up, if you use, boiler A, which is not as energy efficient as boiler C, which we know saves 30% of the utilization, right? We can lend you the money, but you need to use these types of technologies within your building, and we can finance the deployment of these technologies within your building based on trying to come up with some, as opposed to trying to come up with some artificial, we think they're going to save this.
There's two ways to come at that. The first, I think like the second way, we actually have incorporated some of that into this, but if we wanted to just sort of completely move away from this, the percentage above code and all that for the whole building, and that's where we started, is let's think about it from individual measures. But as we looked around the country and talked to developers and thought about how we implement that, it's like, if we're going to make it essentially like measure based, right? Like, let's talk your boiler. We want you to do a boiler with this amount of efficiency. Then we're going to have to start like breaking out individual measure cost from a much larger overall construction budget. And our sense was most developers don't really think about, like, they're building a building. They're not thinking about the individual energy consuming measures within that building. It would cause them to start line item their budget and pulling things out and thinking in a way that it could make the barrier to entry too high. So instead, we took this whole building approach. Like, let's not try to get an individual. Let's just say, let's figure out what your overall buildings, because we got to prove the savings. Right? I think it's
but I don't think it's real. I guess is what I'm saying is, for purposes of new construction, right? Just new construction, it's where there's a track record and there's a history of the energy of the building. It's obviously much easier to say, we save this energy, right? But what about tying, when it comes to new construction, not basically trying to come up with some complex calculation that is, kind of airball, right? Because it's not quote unquote real, because it's not really quantifiable. It's based on projections, right? Why not saying, for purposes of new construction, we've been able to ensure that green technology was deployed. And here's the green technology that was deployed on the new construction. And just, does that make it an easier conversation as well with the developer to say, if you build this building with green intent, and you build it with the latest and greatest green technology, we will help you finance it, because we just know that it saves more money based on, everything we've done with retrofitting previously built buildings.
We've done that to a degree where we have these bonus technologies where we like kind of doing, we say, if you do, here's a list of things that we EV chargers, solar, electric heat pumps, all those things we like and we know do good things. If you do 2 of those, then you can you can finance 15-20% of your overall cost. But we couldn't. What you're talking about doing is actually, even on the retrofit side, that's exactly what we want to do. We want to be able to say, let's forget about modeling the savings. Let's just pick a better, if you'll just do this better piece of equipment, which we know is better than what you would do, what the code requirement is. If you'll just do this more efficient piece, we all win, and we wish we want to finance it. The statute, the statute is pretty black and white. It says energy savings must exceed the cost. So try as we might, we're still we still have to prove that there are energy savings which require some sort of modeling. It's not as theoretical. I mean, you know, these building models are complex. You're putting in, yeah, it is theoretical in the sense that you're putting in like the code requirements, but that, I mean, that gets to, that's the equipment you're picking. So you're picking the efficiency levels for your HVAC equipment that's required by code, and then you're able to, that's for the baseline, and then for your actual performance, you are acting like you're able to take credit for those for picking the higher level equipment. So we are capturing, you know, those decisions, and you're getting credit for it, but we just couldn't legally. I mean, Brian's not here, but I've taken several runs at him. We couldn't get to just like, you know, if you'll pick more efficient equipment, we'll finance it. We do have.
Well, maybe we need, and I'm not saying we can do this, and obviously I know a bit how the legislature works. I'll defer to Lonnie, but maybe we could, you know, lobby for a change as it relates to new buildings, and talk about green technology as opposed to trying to come up with this. Truly, I just believe it's much more artificial than a retrofit where you go in and you can actually calculate, here was my energy cost before, here's my energy cost now. That's a slam dunk. That's okay, right? When you go into this, there's so many other factors that go into new construction as to whether you actually are getting that energy savings. I just think I don't know that it's accurate. Okay, I don't mean to belabor the point, but I think if we truly believe that we want to finance this new construction, maybe we do need to go back and get a different measure and say, you know, we want to be able to deploy we want to be able to finance the deployment of green technologies, period. And maybe that's a conversation worth having. Maybe somebody's already had it and they shot it down, and I'm not aware of that.
No, we just met this week. We think there's opportunities on the retrofit side too, that the existing energy savings language is not allowing to happen, but are things that we want to happen. So we will come back, and we'll do it on the new construction side too. We'll come back to y'all in the next few months to have this exact discussion, because we do think changes are needed to the statute, because I think good opportunities are being left on the table.
Y'all, your Southern came out there. I reckon we'll be talking then.
Hey, Mackie, this is Sadi. I'm back. Can I add?
Who's that? Who's here?
Oh, this is Satyan. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes. Please. Yes.
Hi, Tom. I think, I think I'll support what Mackie's saying, right? I mean, I think for the most part, we're piggybacking on what Eversource and UI are doing for new construction programs. So we're really not reinventing the wheel. The only change that's coming and looming in front of us right now are the codes that set the benchmarks are going up higher and higher every 2-3 years, right? So if we are going to peg us as a body that is going to, you know, force people to implement higher efficiency designs, that code has to be the reference point. And I think I totally understand where you're coming from. Can we make this a la carte, right? Like, hey, install high efficiency lighting, install high efficiency heat pumps, or whatever that may be. But when you do new construction, really, there is so much interactivity that goes on.
Agreed.
It's a challenge. So, I mean, I think your point is well noted, but it seems like at least where we stand right now, this seems to be, at least that's my opinion, seems to be the best solution that we can hang our hats on, right?
Well, it's the best solution, I think, under the current rule. I'm questioning whether the current rule, the current statute, as it relates to new construction, needs to be revisited. I mean, because when we talk about, I can see a time when we talk about here at the board level, how much energy efficiency did we roll out across the state? And you guys come out and say, we did XYZ this year. Well, if XYZ is a combination of actual savings from retrofitting, right, that we've seen, this was their energy cost before, this is their energy cost now, calculable, as well as kind of this projection on new, it kind of messes up the stat in my opinion, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I can add to this, Tom, is with the building models we are proposing that people do, we will be able to put numbers to this, right? There will be quantification of savings, greenhouse gas emission reductions, all of those impacts that we care about will come out of this. There will be nothing
Right, but they're
fluff about them.
projections. But they're projections. At the end of
Yes,
the
I
day,
mean they're
you're not
hourly
going from
building
actual.
simulation models.
Right.
Yeah. The point that I appreciate you opening the door here on the exploring the statutory change, and it's one that we'll fully take advantage of to step into and bring something back to the board here in a few months, because I think both the new construction and the retrofit side, I think there's opportunity left on the table. So if
Yeah, and
we
that's
can,
just my opinion, right? I mean, others might totally disagree, which is totally fine. But it's just, I like to see real quantifiable and not, hey, we think it's going to be that and it's going to be that, regardless of how well it's calculated. That's all I'm saying.
Got it. I think your point is noted, Tom. You know, there is one part to simulate something, and it's a whole other thing to see actually it happen in real life.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
So are there any more questions?
This is John Harrity. I just had a kind of a general question, not to prolong the discussion, but I'm just wondering, you know, we're in a period of suddenly high inflation, and there's also discussion about raising interest rates, and I'm wondering about the impact of those things on programs like this.
so this, what we're
Mackie,
proposing.
you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I'll say,
Patty?
I mean, oh, can you hear me?
Yep,
Yes.
we can hear you, Mackie.
Okay. Yeah, this is really just the administrative framework here. So it's, you know, it will open up the lending that's possible to the new constructions, or it'll, you know, sort of change it and put it in place. So this won't tie us in, you know, to any sort of lending decisions, but I mean, on sort of our CPACE lending side, I mean, I'll let Bert step in terms of our interest rate risk, but I mean, you know, it's one we have to think carefully about with CPACE, because, you know, these are fixed for the new construction loans are typically 25 years. So, you know, there's a fair amount of interest rate risk given the environment we're in now, you know, given that term length. But I'm going to defer to the actual chief investment officer in terms of how we think about our interest rates in this environment.
Well, I maybe, John, let me, in the interest of time, I think your question is going to whether perhaps interest rates more generally is going to put upward pressure on interest rates for this product, and therefore kind of, I mean, CPACE generally, not just say new construction, but CPACE generally, and that might pinch kind of the ability of small and medium businesses, or all businesses, quite frankly, to take advantage of the access to capital that CPACE provides. Is that kind of where you're concerned?
Well, yeah, that plus the fact that what we are doing is we're comparing present costs to you know, future energy cost based on using renewables. And so if it gets more costly to install, you know, purchase and install that equipment and do that work, then that delta, I would think, would be reduced. So you know, so I'm just wondering in general what higher cost money does to this whole thing.
Yeah, it's certainly part of the SIR analysis. The cost of funds is, and so but there are certainly other factors in the SIR equation. You know, an estimated energy costs going forward, No one has a crystal ball there. I think I'd have to lean on Mackie and Sadi to kind of weigh in after I offer a couple of comments on how they factor in future energy costs. If somebody was using, for example, natural gas, that has been going up quite considerably lately. So the savings, for instance, if we're putting in energy efficiency measures that are going to result in lower natural gas use, that's going to, a higher cost for gas is going to drive that savings equation in a positive direction, and could very well be outweighed by the increase in financing costs, which could be the case. One of the things we've done, John, in fact, we kicked it off, I think, in January, was we looked at the increasing cost of, particularly as it relates to small businesses or smaller projects. We looked at the increasing costs of energy. This goes back to last summer. We had a sit down, made the case internally that, look, energy costs look like they're going higher. We certainly weren't as savvy or clairvoyant to be able to see, a war in Europe was on the horizon and what that might mean for energy costs. We were just looking at the supply-demand equation, looking at increasing energy costs, and we just said, look, let's do something that makes it easier for small businesses and smaller projects to kind of get to finance these projects. So we decided that for 2022, we would put a lower interest rate on smaller projects. So up to $500,000, and Mackie can go through the particulars, we agreed to drop our rates by 50 basis points, as well as offer an enhancement. If you're doing battery storage or EV charging, you can get an extra interest rate benefit. So to try to promote not only energy efficiency, but measures, as well as renewable energy, but also deployment of these other measures that Connecticut policy was actually bringing onto the table as of January 1. So we said, look, let's hit this market, left, right, and center with more affordable capital, make that capital available, make these benefits really attainable to the market that really is struggling here, or has the potential to really struggle with higher energy costs. And so that's what we kicked off January 1. So we're trying to do what we can as a public authority to try to help smaller businesses in particular cope with these stresses and strains. Mackie, I don't know if you wanted to comment either on the SIR and the energy forecast and how that kind of fits into it. But I know we're challenged for time, so we don't want to do too deep a dive. We can, anyway.
Yeah, so real quick, I've just been trying to think hard on that, John. It's a really good point. Because yeah, especially projects on the edge of SIR, they're good projects. They could suffer even more, or they even slip under. So in the short term, what we've talked about, yes, we incorporate rising energy costs into our SIR analysis. We've always talked about thinking about, like, in terms of just the value of the savings, though, either baking inflation or something, accounting for time value of money somehow, which, given the world we're in now, we probably should come back to that. But in the long term, I think the door that Tom opened already is one we should think seriously about, which is, there's already projects that I think are good projects that aren't penciling, even in today's world, which some now might slip into that because of the exact point you raised. So I think long term, we should have the conversation with the board on a statutory change that can open the door to allow, again, I think, what are good energy efficiency projects to fit in. So we'll think about that in the short term, just how we can adjust the SIR to bake in inflation. But yeah, long term, we'll come back to the board with sort of those changes and potential projects that I'm talking about.
So this is Vicki Hackett. I just would encourage, I think this would be something that would be good to work on in the joint committee with the Energy Efficiency Fund as well, because we're getting ready to issue our decision on the 3-year plan, and we're looking at cost effectiveness and some of these sort of same issues. So, just might be helpful to think about how we could be consistent between the programs.
Well, as we say in the legislature, it's a work in progress. And the reality is that the world we've always lived in is you have to keep revisiting this stuff based on global events and all the other things that are happening. I think as we're talking about statutory changes, that wouldn't be this session, right? That would be, unless you shoved it in the implementer if you had something you thought looked good. So that would be in the next session. Is that right, Mackie? Is that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we've already got a CPACE bill. It just got out of committee this session, so we can't change it now. So yeah, like I said, we were literally talking this week about starting to develop this, what it would look like, and playing out the conversation with the board. So this is perfect setting that up, and we'll definitely be back.
That's great. And one other quick question. Are we noticing that certain developers are have a good learning curve, that they're kind of getting up to speed on this and what looks good, what the product choices are going to fast track their approvals? Or do we have any webinars on that we could put together on that to sort of help developers get a sense of how to do it?
Yep, definitely. The developers that did that biggest project, now that they understand CPACE, they're already looking to incorporate it into another project. And yeah, awareness is raising, not where it should be. So once we have this finalized, we'll definitely start a round of outreach to continue to try to raise the profile of this tool.
Yeah, and I'll add that was actually one of the comments that we heard from our capital provider partners is kind of like, this is a new program. We want to make it easy for folks to understand it so they do more projects. So, keeping that in mind as we were writing these, keeping it simple up front and letting folks kind of come in and absorb on their first one and, want to continue to do more, as Mackie said. That's really the goal. So we definitely had an eye on that while we were writing these.
Great. Any more comments or observations? Do I hear a motion to move Resolution 6?
So moved, John Harity.
Thank you, John. Do I hear a second?
Seconded, Vicki.
Thank you, Vicki. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, moving on to our next item. Oh, this is
okay.
Is this going to be Sergio?
Yes, that's correct.
Actually, yeah, that's right.
Good. There's kind of some exciting news on this front.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes. Go ahead, Sergio.
All right. Good morning, everyone. This is Sergio Carrillo. I'm Director of Incentive Programs. And I wanted to provide a quick update on the battery storage program that just launched. In the interest of time, I think we have 40-some slides to go. I'll be very brief. As way of background, for particularly for the new members of the board, back in June of 2021, legislators passed Public Act 2153, establishing an energy storage goal in the state of 1,000 megawatts by 2030, by the end of 2030. Just shortly after PA 2153 passed, PURA established a battery storage program targeting the deployment of 580 megawatts of behind the meter battery storage. The program was structured in three-year cycles with deployment targets that you can see in the slide. It's 580 megawatts total, split 50-50 between residential and non-residential. For the cycle that started on January 1, the deployment target is 100 megawatts, split 50-50, 50 megawatts residential, 50 megawatts non-residential. Something that I haven't talked much about in previous meetings is just roles and responsibilities. Let me concentrate on the left column, the green bank responsibilities. We're basically responsible for the front end of the program, which includes contractor vetting and approval, the applications, the incentive applications review, customers enrollment, the marketing and outreach, which is it will be very critical, particularly to promote the program in disadvantaged communities and low-income households. Obviously, the administration of the upfront incentive, a similar role that we played in the RCIP program, project inspections, very similar to what we did throughout RCIP, and also important, the data aggregation and publication. We're going to be responsible for communicating the benefits that the program creates for all ratepayers. One joint responsibilities is the EM&V, the evaluation, measurement, and verification, which is just measuring the progress of the program every year to ensure that we are achieving the targets, that we are deploying enough battery storage, that we're reaching disadvantaged communities and low-income communities, etc. Next slide, please. This slide describes the process that we will follow from the vetting of the contractors until we actually disburse the upfront incentives. The top half describes the application processes, two processes, the application and the completion of the project. The application process includes vetting and approving contractors, allowing contractors to submit incentive applications, the review of the applications, etc., until we are able to issue reservation of funds letter, which is basically us telling the contractors and the homeowners, okay, the upfront incentive has been reserved and you can go ahead and install your battery and energize the battery. This process is very similar for residential and non-residential applications. It will take us, it's a matter of a month, probably between the initial application to the issuance of the reservation of funds letter. And the bottom half describes the completion phase, which is once the battery has been energized, the contractor informs the green bank that everything is good to go. We do the site inspections. If all boxes check, we're able to issue the final, what we're calling the confirmation of funds letter, and eventually proceed with the payment of the upfront incentive. And next slide, please. And this is where I really wanted to get to. This is the message. The question that, previous slide, Brian, sorry. There you go. Thank you. The question that we're asked every single day, and is how much capacity is available in the program. And to be quite honest, the interest in the program has exceeded all our expectations. On the residential side, we have received 40 applications totaling roughly 500 kWs of capacity. This is roughly what 1% of the target of the 2022-2024 target. However, on the non-residential side, the story is very different. We have received 31 applications for much larger systems, totaling 53.3 megawatts of storage capacity, which means that in roughly 60 days of the program, because we launched on January 1st, but the application platform that we built wasn't available until mid-January. So in 60 days, all the applications have exceeded the 3-year target. And the capacity available is completely depleted for the non-residential applications. We haven't approved any of these capacity yet. We were working on the contractor side, vetting contractors, reviewing, approving new technologies, and we just approved the first 2 technologies. The letters of approvals went out yesterday. Is for the Tesla Mega Pack, which is a commercial grade battery, very large system. And then we also sent out the letter to SunPower, which are all the series of residential batteries. So we are about to start sending reservation of funds letters out because the program starts on June 1st. These are going to be 2 very busy months. All the completion of all these projects are expected to happen in April and May. We're incredibly excited about this. That's all I have. Is there any questions?
Yes, this is very exciting. It's Vicki. So some of you have heard me say this before, and again, we're in the midst of getting ready to release our decision on the 3-year conservation load management plan. And one of the things we're really looking at is heat pump deployment. And we're very interested in, sort of breaking down the silos between programs and figuring out how to package up storage with heat pumps, solar where available, because that can help make the use case for heat pumps, more attractive. So just putting this out there for the thought and future discussion that, we're going to be looking for ways to coordinate among all of the programs and pull all the programs together through, I guess we're looking for ideas from you all as well about how best to do that so that we can start achieving more holistic home energy retrofits and bringing heat pumps into that equation, especially since the solar tariff through PURA allows, for solar panels to be, for solar array to be sized to accommodate heating load through heat pumps and electric vehicle charging. So, just putting out there that we'd really like to see, especially the storage program paired with heat pump applications, and very open to ideas on how to incentivize that and get the industry sort of all coordinating and rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, Commissioner Hackett, yes, thank you. That's a very good point. We have been engaged with the utilities for the past 9 months. We're working with their CLM people, and yes, I'll make sure I bring this up in our next meetings. Very good point.
Yes, and we will have requirements for the utilities that we're thinking about as well for that. So, but I just want to sort of start, putting that out there for discussion and for awareness.
Great. And just a quick point before we move to the next agenda item. One of the things that we've advocated strongly for in both the residential renewable energy tariff and the battery storage programs is requiring the home energy solutions or home energy solutions income eligible, and both those elements are built into the program. So that'll be the gateway, most definitely. But since our EDC colleagues implement both programs, we should be right there on the front line. They might need some direction, Commissioner, but yes.
Yes, I think we're close because of that, Brian. I think that heat pumps are sort of, there's still a lot of barriers left to heat pump deployment, including sort of the cost of electricity and switching people from, other resources to heat pumps. but that can be mitigated when they are solar and or storage customers. So that's why, you know, we see that as kind of the highest and best use case for heat pump deployment. So would really like to accelerate in that direction. So, but yes, that connection, having the utility administrators, you know, involved in both programs is certainly going to be helpful.
Hey, Brian, this is Satyan. Can I add to this?
Sorry, we're going to try to pick it up. We're already running behind. Forgive
Got
me
it.
that.
All right.
Thanks.
Another time.
Okay, thanks, Sadi.
Yep.
Stay engaged, though. Yes, so we're moving on to our next two items, and I think, Bert, if we can hand it over to you, and if you could expedite it. I don't want to lose our quorum, and we're running long.
Yes, and thank you, Madam Chair. So the next, thank you very much. We're bringing to the board two resolutions related to our Smart E program, which Joe Buonanata of Inclusive Prosperity Capital, or IPC, will recap in a moment. First, underpinning our interest rate buy downs, which is what we do to promote deployment of clean energy measures, we use ARRA funds, American Recovery and Reinvestment Act funds. Originally, the Green Bank was bestowed from DEEP about $8.4 million of these ARRA funds that were approved for, well, that was what was approved for various programs. I think we might have actually gotten more than that previously, but they were used for other purposes. So we're going to come to the board today to seek a reallocation of those ARRA funds. They're about $625,000 left, but we're trying to get them all in one location so we can use those for interest rate buy downs for the Smart E program. The second resolution will address the expanded scope that was voted on and approved by the legislature and signed into law by the governor to expand our scope into environmental infrastructure. So we want to permit the Smart E program to be able to address some of those things. We'll talk about that. And also, as I mentioned in my commentary, in the CNI program space on commercial PACE, there have been some Connecticut policy adjustments or promotions or innovations for battery electric storage and EV charging. These are going to be picked up by homeowners, and they'll be looking to do some of that. Some of these customers already have Smart E loans available that will begin to challenge some of the program limits that we have in place. So we're going to be seeking an increase in limits, and that's contained in the second resolution that will come before you. I think that is 6C. Joe, if you could briefly give the board members a recap or summary of the Smart E program, that'd be great. And then you can swing it back to me, and then I'll introduce those two resolutions. Thanks.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me. I'm Joe Buonanata with Inclusive Prosperity Capital. So I'll go through these next few slides very, very quickly, but the Smart E loan is the Connecticut Green Bank's single-family residential financing program for home energy improvements. So a homeowner in Connecticut can finance 40 different energy improvements, ranging across different sectors: solar, high-efficiency heating and cooling, windows, insulation, battery storage, etc. It's really anything that can save the homeowner on their fuel or their electric bills. The current loan amount range from $500 to $40,000 across 4 rate and term options. We offer this program in partnership with 9 local lenders, so a community development financial institution, credit unions, and a network of community banks. And we currently have about 350 trained contractors who offer this program. We can advance to the next slide. It can show you who those lenders are. So they're fanned all across the state, and they're on 2 separate term sheets, allowing any borrower in Connecticut with a 580 credit score minimum and a 50% debt income maximum to qualify. That's where the bulk of our volume is. About 90% of the volume is on that. Is with lenders in that credit challenge term sheet option. And on the next slide, we can see a handful of high-level summary statistics of where the program is currently. We're in year 9 of the program. We have about 6,000 closed loans for about $90 million financed. This is private capital deployed by these lenders with an average loan amount of about $15,000. The overall summary here is that this is a very healthy portfolio. We've got an average credit score of about 744, very low delinquency and default and charge-off rate as compared to the overall size. And I will talk to pass it over to Bert for more information on the error restriction.
Okay, thank you, Joe. So as I mentioned earlier, the originally the board had approved $8.4 million for various programs. Those programs have used collectively just shy of $8 million. There's about $625,000 available. And what we want to do is to get approval to use the remaining funds, move them around from the various programs, which was explained in very deep detail in the memorandum that was brought to the board. But the bottom line is we're going to use some of that money, about $165,000 for Smart E lender loan losses that have accumulated over time. This is a very small amount, given that the program has done $90 million of loans, and then to repurpose $300,000 in ARISEP funds that are currently in the Lime program to loan loss reserves with Green Bank funds that would then free up those funds to be available for the Smart E loan program for IRBs, and the same thing from a couple of other programs as explained in the memo and covered by the resolutions. So I'll stop there. If there are any questions on that particular one, maybe we can have a turn to you, Madam Chair, for a vote.
Any questions? Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve resolution number 5?
This is
Do you hear a
Dominic.
motion?
This is Dominic. So moved.
I'll make the motion, John Harity.
Okay, so I think Dominic moved. So John, can you second?
Yes.
Excellent. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, resolution 5 is approved.
Okay, if you could advance one more slide, please. So as I mentioned in my opening comments, we want to add environmental infrastructure improvements as defined in statute now. It's been codified under 16245N. So that would enable us to use the Smart E program for environmental infrastructure measures. However, we wouldn't be doing that until the deployment committee determines the specific measures by segment, water, waste, recycling, and so forth, to be supported through the Smart E program. That was a comment that was made by the deployment committee. So they are recommending bring it to the board for approval, but for the board to then delegate back to the deployment committee to determine those specific measures. And we've already commenced discussions with our friends at DEEP about that. So we're setting forth a process of identifying those measures and any particular issues related to actually bringing that into force. The other item, other resolution relates to increasing Smart E maximum loan amounts from $45,000 to $75,000. and raising the Green Bank approval threshold from $40,000 to $50,000 as it relates to clean energy projects. What this means is because solar and energy efficiency already can get up to about $40,000 of an initial loan amount. If the person qualifies, the homeowner qualifies, they might want to do a battery storage, which can be anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 or even $25,000, depending upon the installation. They might want to go for an EV charger. That's going to be a smaller amount of dollars, particularly with the nice incentives that have been approved by Pura. So, but in any case, it's quite possible that with that, and also for ground source heat pumps, we can get above the $45,000 level. This is all subject to loan underwriting by our partner institutions. And so this is all under their control. However, if the loan amount would go above $50,000, it's presently $40,000, they have to come to us and ask us for a checkoff, and we just do a review of the credit information that the bank makes available, and then we decide whether it's okay or not. I can't remember an instance where we've rejected or overturned anything that has been proposed by the bank. They've been underwriting quite well, and as you saw in the program statistics, 1.4% in terms of write-offs over the entire history is quite an acceptable amount. So for personal credit and unsecured credit. So in any case, that's what's before the board. So I would appreciate if Madam Chair, you could bring that for a vote, subject to any questions from the directors.
I actually have a comment. So at DEEP, we would like to be involved in the process of deciding which improvements are eligible, given DEEP's expertise in this area. That this is what DEEP does, and so we would like to have a role in defining eligible improvements. So I know that I believe that what we're talking about is sending this over to the deployment committee. Is that correct? But I would really like to see something added that talks about working with DEEP to define what these improvements are.
Yeah, this is Brian. I'll just add, we agree with that, Vicki. We had a conversation yesterday with Commissioner Dykes and the team across the agency, and that's the guidance that we got. May, September, and November are the deployment committee timelines. So we're going to be working with the respective agency staffers to dig into the types of measures that we believe will advance public policy. And from that, those measures to the deployment committee, in the May, September.
May I suggest inserting in the third line of the first resolution, after it says authorizes the deployment committee to determine, insert in consultation with the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection.
I think that works for me. Thank you.
Oh, Mackie, do we have to rewrite the resolution, or can we just vote to accept that?
I think we just vote to accept the amendment to the resolution.
Okay. Also,
actually, the resolution hasn't been moved yet. So I will put forward that language that I just said. I'll reread the first resolution. So the first resolution, instead of what is in your board package, will read in its totality: resolve that the board approves amending the Smart E eligible improvements category to include residential environmental infrastructure improvements as defined in Public Act 21-115, and authorizes the deployment committee to determine, in consultation with the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, the specific measures by segment, e.g. water, waste and recycling, et cetera, to be supported through the SMART-E program, semicolon and. So with that, if there could be, you can manage the motion from there, Madam Chair.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the amended Resolution 6?
So moved.
This is Brenda, I second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution 6 is approved. Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Excellent. Oh, and so we're very excited. We have a guest today who's going to really sort of give us the fine points on where we stand with the Jobs Act opportunity. The Department of Energy and Loan Programs Office we have a wonderful representative, and I think Brian Garcia, you wanted to introduce the gentleman who will address us.
Great. Thank you, everyone. So we're saving the best for last. No pressure, Rob. You'll deliver. No, just continuing our conversations from the last board meeting of talking about the great stuff coming out of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. I wanted to thank Sarah Harari on the team for suggesting, let's bring in the DOE LPO into one of these board conversations. We've got Rob Edwards here with us. He is the Director of Outreach and Business Development for what's called the LPO, the Loan Programs Office of the Department of Energy. So he's really front and center in terms of communicating to the market the value proposition of the LPO is advancing. He's an accomplished executive who's been active as an attorney and banker in the energy sector for over the past 20 years. He also fondly knows our Commissioner Dykes and Mackie Dykes, having worked with them in the Obama administration. But let me turn it over to you, Rob. Thank you for joining today, and thank your team for prepping everything and getting us all settled.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks very much for the kind introduction. Can everyone see and hear me? This GoToMeeting, I see myself in a little teeny tiny box in the upper left-hand corner, but can people see me and hear me?
You're perfect, and then the slides are.
I can see you.
Okay, terrific.
You do that little box proud.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. All right, terrific. So I'm Rob Edwards, and I head the Outreach and Business Development Division of the Loan Programs Office. Jigashaw created this division as the investor, developer, financier, experts facing division of the Loan Programs Office. Our job is to be in industry with you, working with the developers who are trying to bring to scale new clean energy and EV technologies. Our remit is very, very wide. We can cover almost anything that we would all on this phone consider to be clean energy, or would consider to be part of the EV supply chain and charging infrastructure supply chain. Next slide. We can go past that one. Next one. Okay, so we are the bridge to bankability. Basically, as we're all familiar, there are several valleys of death for young companies trying to bring a clean energy technology to market and to scale. Some of the early valleys of death, it's the venture capitalists who are more able to help companies get through those very early stages when they are bringing the TRL levels, technology readiness levels, to higher and higher numbers. Then the venture capitalists may also be able to fund a pilot or bench demonstration in a lab, or maybe a small demonstration project. But once a company needs several $100 million to basically scale their technology at a level where they can introduce their products or services into the marketplace. That's a new valley of death. And so what we do, as you can see from this bridge, which looks a little bit like the Golden Gate Bridge, we start with proven technologies, which have most likely already been demonstrated at a scale that's larger than a lab, but much smaller scale than would be needed to effectively supply the market segment that this technology would like to address. So we are ready to fund the first commercial deployment of this technology. We have, as Jigger likes to say, 10,000 engineers in the DOE, which is all the folks in Forrestal, and plus 17 national labs. We are, when collectively considered, the single best, deepest, and broadest scientific and engineering expertise in clean energy in the world, bar none. And what we are trying to do in this administration is bring all of that to a focus on financing commercial deployments, as well as with our new Office of Clean Energy Demonstration, filling another gap of funding where we will now be participating in the first demonstration level projects. Next slide. Okay, just to give you a sense of how busy we are since the beginning of the administration last year, we now have an active pipeline of 77 individual applications requesting $70 billion in loans. The heat map on the right side shows the distribution of the requested loans. Storage is our largest area, but that includes both lithium-ion batteries for EVs, as well as alternative chemistries for stationary storage. We have an advanced nuclear program, which is very large. We are determined to support the U.S. industry as it tries to build an industry around small modular reactors, which are going to be the technologies that allow us to benefit from zero emissions nuclear power in the future. Virtual power plants are collective of assets and software that are distributed. So there are lots of small installations. It could be as small as a rooftop solar and an associated energy storage system. But the key here is that they are tied together through the web and the internet to serve as resources for the grid, to provide resources to the ISOs, RTOs, or to the utilities themselves for grid services. Another big area is biofuels. There's a very big push for sustainable aviation fuels. Aviation is one of the hardest sectors to decarbonize, and it's still not clear which biofuel through which pathway is going to be able to scale in a manner to really begin to address the incredible volume of fuels that the aviation industry uses on a daily basis. Next slide. So we are financing American energy infrastructure. I like to say we are financing the energy transition. And I don't have to go through all those little boxes on the bottom. Suffice it to say, we currently have more than $40 billion in available debt capital to be deployed across a wide range of technologies. Next slide. So I got to know the commissioner and Mackie way back in 2009. We were all on the 7th floor together. No, I'm sorry. Mackie was on the 7th floor with the secretary. The commissioner and I were on the 6th floor with the general counsel's office. We were not as highly situated as Mackie was. And we were running around the building trying to get the Recovery Act funding out the front door. Part of the Recovery Act funding was coming through the Loan Programs Office. And I'd like to say, I believe that those folks involved in the Recovery Act during the Obama administration did a great job getting the money out the door into the economy within the 2-year period required under the statutes. This diagram shows the portfolio that was built basically through conditional commitments between 2009, 2011, 12. We lent over $35 billion to a variety of projects, including ATVM. We did the Tesla loan, which saved the company from bankruptcy. Advanced nuclear, we did the Vogtle plant, which is the only nuclear power plant currently under construction in the United States. Utility scale solar projects, including some innovative technologies like concentrated solar projects, and a variety of other renewable projects. You can go to the next slide. This gives you a better idea of the breakdown of the types of projects that we did during, well, I can call this LPO 1.0. I now think we're in LPO 2.0. Next slide. So where are we today in LPO 2.0? We have $40 billion of total capital available, and it is split up across the programs as shown on this slide. Title 17 is the Innovative Energy Loan Guarantees and Loans, and we've got $4.5 billion available for renewable energy and efficient energy, almost $11 billion available for advanced nuclear, $8.5 billion for advanced fossil, which of course will include carbon capture and storage, as well as other less obvious projects like the one we did our first conditional commitment in LPO 2.0, which was the Monolith project, which was gotten a conditional commitment in December of last year, and they will be doing carbon black, which is used for tires. They are a feedstock to make tires, and this particular facility will make tires and will do it in a way that also incorporates using hydrogen and other cleaner fuels. Advanced Technology Manufacturing Program, Tesla says it all. We launched the electric vehicle industry along with Tesla in 2010. I worked directly with Elon finalizing that loan. We signed up the loan in 2010 January, and he was able to get the first disbursement of that loan in February 2010. And then the rest is history. He did a IPO in June of 2010, and now has built one of the most valuable companies on the planet. Finally, we have the Tribal Program, which is focused on bringing the benefits of the clean energy transition to the tribes. And this program does not require innovation. It simply requires that the tribe is benefiting and participating in the project. Next slide. This is one of the most interesting possibilities for the Connecticut Green Bank and other state green banks. The BIL provided a new authority for the LPO, which allows us to work very aggressively with the state green banks. So if you take a look at the statutory language here, we don't usually like to do this. As everyone knows, I'm mostly a lawyer, now doing some other finance and business functions, but I still don't like putting out statutory language for a general crowd. But in any event, what this says is we are able to participate through Title 17 in projects receiving financial support or credit enhancements from state energy financing institutions as eligible projects in general and for purposes of repayment. What this says in normal English is that we can lend to a project that the Connecticut Green Bank is working on and providing any type of financing support. That could be a guarantee, That could be first loss loan. It could be a grant. Any of these things that demonstrate. I mean, I know I joined a while back, so I saw the different resolutions that you're passing and the bank's relentless effort to remain relevant and on the cutting edge. That's why you've got all these resolutions and are constantly reviewing and reshaping exactly what you do. If we get the funding under Build Back Better or some version of BBB, we will be able to work with you and bring billions of dollars to support projects that you can support at your level and capacity of funding and risk. Further, this law says that the projects do not even need to be innovative. They can be your grandfather's solar panel. Now, I say that with a little tongue in cheek. First of all, our grandfathers didn't have solar panels. But secondly, I'm not worried about this because what I see in the marketplace is that everyone in the clean energy sector is bringing innovation to what they're doing. None of the companies are moving forward with 5-year-old technologies. They're all trying to bring the latest technology to bear, which will then have the best impact with respect to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and the like. So allows partnerships between state energy financing institutions and private entities, tribal entities, Alaska Native corporations in carrying a project under this title. This expansion of authority not in effect until congressional appropriations. So I would suggest call every one of your green bank leaders. And then, no, I can't suggest that, so I'll stop there. Next slide. Renewable energy and efficient energy. Here are some of the technologies that fit under that. Advanced grid integration and storage, what we call virtual power plants. Alternative fuel vehicle infrastructure. So interestingly, EV charging falls under Title 17, not ATVM. Distributed energy projects, that's also VPPs, efficiency improvements, enhancements of existing facilities, and offshore wind and related infrastructure. That's a big one. You know, we have a goal in the administration of 30 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030. That's a very stretched goal because we do not yet have the supply chain to build those offshore wind projects. Everyone, I'm sure, followed the recent announcements by BOEM and the leases off the East Coast. So the developers are, you know, putting on their big boy pants and they're getting ready to develop these wind farms. But we're going to have to build the offshore wind industry supply chain from scratch. It's estimated we're going to need 30, 40 vessels to construct and operate these wind farms. We may have 3 of them now. So how are we going to get the vessels financed and built? With respect to transmission, what's the best way to bring all this offshore wind capacity onshore? Should we be using HVDC? Should we be using mesh? How can we do this? And once we get it onshore, how do we evacuate that wind from the onshore connection point out into the grid to where all the loads are located? Next slide. Advanced fossil energy, let's just go right to the right side. Carbon capture, efficiency improvements, low carbon power systems, anything that's taking carbon out of the system, whether it be taking it out of the production of energy or capturing the carbon at the back end of an energy production. Also, you know, renewable natural gas in all of its rainbow of colors will also fit here. Next slide. Let's see, ATVM, Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Program. You know, frankly, after doing the Tesla loan, we could have declared victory and gone home as having launched the electric vehicle industry, but not under this administration, not under the Obama administration, not under the Biden administration. We are doubling down on this effort, and the new legislation under BIL has expanded our authority to cover medium and heavy duty trucks, trains, planes, vessels, Hyperloop, and almost anything else that moves goods or people. Again, we're waiting for the funding under BBB type legislation to expand our reach into all of these other areas. Next slide. And then again, tribal energy program. Those of us who've been in the energy industry for a long time, we know it's been very difficult to get energy projects done on tribal lands and or with tribes for a variety of reasons. Well, we're doubling down to try to make these clean energy projects happen on tribal lands and with tribal leadership. Next slide. So we basically have two products that we offer. One, what we call is a direct loan. This is the Department of Energy borrows from the Federal Financing Bank, which is a window in the Department of Treasury. We borrow from Treasury. We guarantee the repayment of the loan back to Treasury. We then lend that Treasury money to a borrower, and that's called a direct loan. And then we also can offer loan guarantees where a bank like Chase or Citi or JP Morgan or someone comes and makes a loan, and then we can guarantee up to 90% of the principal amount lent. We are always senior secured. And we have an underwriting structure that's just like any other bank that you would be familiar with. Next slide. And here is a overview of our process. Pre-application consultation. This is what my team does. My team's name is Outreach and Business Development, and we work with applicants as early as the applicant is ready to talk to us, and we help the applicant curate a successful application. Once we in OBD and the applicant are ready, we then have the applicant submit the application into the formal process through what we call the portal, which is a little bit like what we used to see on Star Trek, where people reassemble themselves and are beamed up and beamed down. We go through the portal, and that's when the formal evaluation process occurs. First, for Title 17, there's an eligibility determination to make sure that the project reduces greenhouse gas emissions as compared to business as usual case, and that it is innovative, which means that the technology has not been deployed more than 3 times during the past 5 years in the United States. We then move this along. If you qualify, you move along and you go into due diligence and term sheet negotiation. You then get to a credit approval process where the loan programs office team presents the project to the credit review board for review, and then eventually the credit review board approves it, and then the secretary signs the conditional commitment. So that's that. Next slide. I think that may be it. And that's the end of the formal presentation. Happy to take questions.
Anybody have any questions?
Hi, this is John Hardy. Not a question, but a comment that it's really exciting to see this activity and to see, you know, a real aggressive move to fund renewables, and you know, it's past due. We've got you know, climate change is coming at us, and so I'm really thankful for the work that you've done.
John, thank you very much. You are welcome to join our team as you beautifully articulate what we're trying to do. So appreciate your sharing your views. Really appreciate that.
Thank you for speaking to us, Rob. That's a wealth of information, and very excited how excited you are to work with us on this going forward. And we should let you know that your friend Mackie has a high floor at the Connecticut Green Bank. So
what else would we expect? Just continues
exactly.
Being on the top floor.
Exactly, where he belongs.
Yes.
Well, come see us often.
Well, absolutely. You know, when you all start meeting in person again, I am starting to get out and about. I was in New Orleans last week speaking to the vessel manufacturing industry, the folks who are going to make the vessels to build the offshore wind industry. I leave for San Francisco on Sunday to speak to the Pacific Offshore Wind Summit. So a lot of work in the offshore wind space. And now that we're getting back into in-person meetings, my job is to be that public-facing, industry-facing part of the loan programs office. So you'll be seeing more of me, I hope.
Oh, that's great. And have you been to New London yet? Have you seen what we're doing there?
No.
A regional deployment center. It's amazing. It's amazing. And of course, there's manufacturing in that region and actually boat builders too. So
yes,
there's a lot of opportunity there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you so much and hope to see you again soon.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Lonnie, nice to meet you. Brian, thank you for the kind invite. And Mackie, great to see you, and everyone be well. Thank you.
Great to see you, Rob. Keep up the great work. God's work.
Yes, yes.
Thank you all.
So I think that concludes our agenda, but we have some really exciting news that was just released by the governor's office. Hard work by various members of our team, I should say. Remember, we all had Joel Reinbold, the Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology, speak to us in January about the hopes for a regional clean hydrogen hub. Well, the governor announced yesterday that Connecticut has joined forces in partnership with New York, New Jersey, and Massachusetts to develop a regional clean hydrogen hub. And, you know, I think there's at least $8 billion available federally. So we're in the game, which is very exciting.
Definitely exciting to see all of that there, Lonnie. And on the state side, DEEP has opened up, as Vicki mentioned at the last board meeting, through the Comprehensive Energy Strategy Planning process, a specific public comment and technical meeting process. I think the technical meeting is April 6th. So DEEP is inviting folks to come in and present their views on clean hydrogen. So we'll be there with Joel. I think we're going to tackle the financing element of the presentation, but would invite others to participate as well. But just very, very exciting to see Governor Lamont and his team. You know, big kudos to Commissioner Dykes and Vicki on bringing this in to the conversation for the CES. Good stuff.
Great. Well, if there are no more comments or questions, I think I'm going to adjourn this. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved, John Harity.
All right, thank you, John. Do I hear a second?
Second by Binu Chandy.
Binu, thank you. Okay. All in favor?
Aye, aye, aye.
Have a great week, everyone.
Nobody's in opposition. I just know that. So, okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. This was a really good meeting. It was long, but very meaty. So thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.